The character that has received the most unprovoked comments for interest just on my videos has been Rosalina. Again, that's just my videos and just people commenting about it without being asked who's their potential favorite, but it led me down the path to consider what some possible builds can and would be with the gear customization in Mario Strikers Battle League. I've done a video on all characters, attributes, and stats thus far, so we can reference that and link to it and everything like that. But here you'll notice Rosalina is pretty stacked just innately without gear even. Offense type, excels in strength, shooting, and technique. Here's the measure, by the way, that I've come up with in another video as well. This will show generally when a stat is kind of miserable on the lower end here, then average or decent here in the middle, with Chad levels on the higher end up here. So we see her shooting is just expert without any gear, right? This leads you to an impasse for all characters actually, and I personally feel this will largely depend on the individual player's preferences rather than what's just generally considered OP in the game or something like that. What I mean is, one person may prefer a character that is fast or has good shooting, but can't tackle very hard at all, so like low strength, whereas another player may want the exact opposite, where they don't mind if their character's pretty slow as long as they're built like a brick outhouse and can take a tackle or can give a huge tackle. Knowing all of that is important as we move forward here, okay? So let's consider a Rosalina build first that buffs the areas where she's a bit weaker or average in. That would be her speed for sure at 9, and then possibly passing at 10. Here's the thing, I personally prioritize speed and strength as two attributes in the game that can't really be worked on. What I mean is that an individual player of this game will likely be able to hone their skill level to find the optimal ways for passing, shooting, maybe technique-related feats, because you can push on the joystick in a certain direction and aim your shots, make them more tricky, and you can set yourself up for more optimal passes by getting closer to the other player or like passing at the right times, etc, etc. But no amount of skill makes you able to withstand a tackle from someone. Like, no matter how good you are, a character of low strength will still fall when tackled, whereas a character with high strength can potentially withstand that tackle, again, unrelated to your skill level. And speed mostly works in the same way. Keep in mind there's like dodging and there's the dash button for speed, but each of those have their limitations or just not directly related. So hopefully that makes sense why speed and strength are two things I'd consider valuable in stacking up for in your builds, if you prefer. I envision a Rosalina that can keep her strong points mostly intact but gain some speed to be an amazing build right here. Even just a few points to her speed may change the game with her. So the turbo set of gear is what adds speed, but you have to see what gets taken away when you add it. To me, turbo boots can almost be a given, because it would take away 2 from the shooting attribute, which is innately at 17 without gear. So you still wouldn't be bordering into the average category here, but also in the high good category, you'd still be pretty well stacked in shooting. Which again, shooting is one of those attributes that can also be affected by your skill level and your performance in-game, whereas no amount of skill will make you run faster outside of your limited use of the dash button. So just this one piece of gear all by itself would actually give you a more all-around kind of Rosalina who now has 11 speed, which is an upgrade from the low category into the average decent category. There's still a very good chance that I'll get my hands on the game and feel very differently once I've played a few matches, but just right now as a hypothetical, this is my possible first Rosalina purist kind of build, like where you just add the one gear. I personally could take it one step further if or when I play Rosalina, and then you could run the turbo helmet possibly to add another 2 to the speed if this next theory plays out correctly. Here's what we would want to explain about that. I've had comments actually from you guys, but I've also thought it over myself, basically wondering exactly how noticeable will it be if you add 2 to an attribute, but it doesn't upgrade to step up with another sub bar. In this specific case, what I mean is like our first piece of gear adding 2 on Rosalina's speed, it seems great whether this theory is correct or not, but the idea would be that because we take her innate speed of 9 up to 11 with our first gear equip, that jumps us up from this low sub bar to the middle, but if we added yet another piece of gear to then boost it on top of that, that would be 2 more points and still keep us in the same middle to average like sub bar. So the question or theory to figure out basically is this difference completely negligible? Is it non-existent entirely? Would 2 points here even matter? Because if it ends up that they just don't matter at all, then we actually would not want to equip even one more piece of gear here. We would then have to equip enough gear to add enough speed points to bring it yet another sub bar higher, putting it into the high category, and because adding gear may add points in one spot but then take away from 2 points on another, some of the other attributes will be affected by that. I do hope to make a video once the full version is actually launched just to figure this theory out. Please keep that in mind mind though, just since this is all speaking in largely hypotheticals at this point. Now, you could also add to Rosalina's strength stat with even just one piece of gear to go with the strength that takes her to the next category of sub-bars from her innate 14 up to 16, again, pushing her over the edge there on strength. The muscle chest is a potential place to start with 2 on strength but -2 on shooting. Once again, we'd be bordering on categories of sub-bars here, but she'd still have 15 shooting. Now with 16 strength. Not too bad. The muscle helmet is another potential option if you don't want even a single shooting point sacrificed, where then technique would be something good to replace since it's +2 strength and -2 technique, putting her technique then at 11. I think that's perfectly viable for my playstyle and preference, but also probably for many people at large. The final build idea that I have for Rosalina is more up to preference if you think that you're going to value the attribute of passing. Because Rosalina's non-gear stats for passing are set to 10, you could push it into the average decent subcategory one upgrade up by just adding one piece of gear that adds the +2 on passing. We know that the chain set of gear is the one that adds to passing. I'd probably advise that the chain gauntlets maybe for -2 on the shooting, or the chain plate since it takes -2 from technique. So here, ultimately, our summarizing statement can be this. Rosalina's looking to be an incredible character innately without gear, but if you do want to add to her abilities in some optimal ways, you can push her to the next level up in either speed, passing, or strength to probably see the most gains. But just to reiterate, if it's not already clear, this is all conjecture and hypothesis rather than true given fact, since we haven't yet been able to test at the time of this upload, and so please keep in mind also individual player preferences. What works for one person may not be what another person wants, so always consider that. But let me know if you want another character analyzed in this way and who. Click an end screen on screen, and thanks for viewing.